everyone, and Jo here, and welcome to today's card creation with the Stamp and Colour kit for June. Now we're going to be using this Aussie Geo Stamp set with coordinating dies for today's card creation. I'm going to be doing a little bit of loose watercolouring and just showing you a bit of technique and heat embossing for today's card. So first what we're going to do is we're actually going to saturate the watercolour cardstock that I've got here from Ranger, and I've got some paint here from Uniquely Creative, some paint pans. To the left I've got the sap green, and to the right of the paint pans I have got the olive. So I've got my spritzer tool and I'm going to heavily spritz this and coat this actual cardstock, and this is watercolor cardstock, and because it's Ranger it's going to be really good for layering. So I've got one layer of ink down first, and then I'm going to paint, and then I'm going to heat it up, and then I'm going to work on the second color, and I work my way around the whole panel and trying to make it look like quite a watercolored effect and loose coloring here. I've got a round 10 brush, and once I've figured I've got enough color there, moving it around, really just working it in, I'm going to then add the leftover paint with some paint splatters. Now I do want to use the darker olive color, so I clean my surface and then make a little pool of my olive green again. So my cardstock here is fairly warped, but I'm going to show you in a minute how to fix that. So flick, 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 I'm flicking my paint all over. So I have used the sap green, and then I'm going to use the olive as well. So I'm going to clean my surface and then recoat and get some water going as well. So spritzing just next to me, because I've got my glass mat, I'm able to get that paint flowing. And now just heat setting this paint splatters. Now for my heat tool, I've got my Wow Embossing heat tool, and I'm going to put this cardstock in between my clear panels here for my die cut machine, and I'm going to roll it through, and that's what actually makes my cardstock go flat. So I'm going to heat emboss now with the pale rich gold in Wow Embossing, the koala. So this design is very geometric, it's awesome, and it actually comes with some accompanying triangles that you can stamp and add layers to within the actual designs. So what I'm going to do is I've prepped my cardstock. I'm using the same watercolor cardstock. I've prepped it up here just with some an embossing buddy tool here, and I'm going to use my Wow Embossing in the clear ultra slow drying ink. I find this is one of the best inks I've ever used. It just gives you that time. If you are doing mass production, you could pretty much just do a whole heap of stamping and then pour some embossing powders and you'll find it still sticks. It's really awesome. So just pouring quite generously here, and I've got a scrap piece of copy paper just to pretty much catch the rest of the excess powder, and I'll pour that in and funnel that in. Now I've got my heat tool here set on level 2 because I am going to heat emboss, whereas previously for just drying my watercolor panel I did put it on level 1, so it's got 2 heat settings here. So just pretty much heat embossing this koala. Isn't it cute? So again, this is the Aussie Geo Stamp set that we have used. And then what I'm going to do is here's a little triangles on the right hand side. I've got some cute little clear blocks. I've got some Distress Oxide inks, and I'm going to just stamp these triangles randomly in. I'm not going to use any method to this at all, because what I'm going to do, even though some of the triangles aren't fitting in snugly in there because I'm just randomly stamping, I'm just going to just going to spritz it with my distress sprayer to make that distress really water out, and you'll see what I mean shortly. So once I'm happy with the amount of triangle stamping I have used and done here, just working it just a little bit, and just wanted a little bit more darker color there. I'm going to then get my spritzer tool, and I'm just going to heavily spritz this. Because I've heavily spritzed this, this is really going to maneuver the Distress Oxide inks and let it do its work. So spraying it, and it actually fills each triangle out quite well. So I just felt like then I'm not colouring it in, I just stamped it, spritz it, and it's actually done the filling in of the colouring process perfectly. So again, just using my heat tool. Now they come with coordinating dies, this stamp set. So I have die cut with around the koala, and then I've got some vellum in a circle stitched from Uniquely Creative as well, and I'm going to just piece everything together. Now these papers are actually from the Stamp and Colour kit as well. I'm going to just create a couple of banners that I'm going to put on the top left. I've cut some fishtail banners here out, and I've got some craft top folding card base. So I'm going to actually just trim this watercolor panel down. I tend to cut my cardstock, my watercolor cardstock, that's slightly bigger than a card size, just because if I want to cut some off, and I've got that creative freedom to do so. So I've got this spare strip of actual watercolor that I've done previously on another project, and I'm going to stamp the sentiment here and heat emboss it with Wow embossing powder in the superfine. Because it's a font, I'm going to be heat setting that so then you can read it, and it says "You're how old?" with a question mark. Isn't that fabulous? I just think it's so funny. So here I am kind of just placing all the pieces together and just kind of figuring out my layout. I had no card in mind. I was just basically letting this card unfold in front of me. So I've got my scrapbook adhesive here, my scrapbook.com adhesive. This is the permanent snail here, and then I'm just placing these banners. Now I gave it a little bit of a haircut because I didn't want it to be too long. I'm going to put some foam adhesive behind the koala, and then I'm going to stick that down on the vellum. So what I'm going to do to secure the spot and secure this vellum down is I'm going to adhere the koala down first, then on the other side of the vellum I'm going to run the adhesive around underneath, so you're not going to see any adhesive peeking through. Now I really wanted that banner to be over the top of the vellum, so it was easy with this vellum to actually have some wiggle room. And here I have the sentiment, and I'm just going to adhere it with liquid adhesive. Because it's watercolor cardstock, I really needed it to be that little bit longer and that little bit stronger in adhesive. So I'm just pressing that down, and then I'm going to give it a little haircut on either side to fit within that watercolor card front. And there you go. So giving it a little bit of a trim. I'm really happy with that layout, how it turned out. I am going to do one more little bit of embellishment. I've got some sequins here from Handmade by Brittany Lee. This is the Tangerine collection, and I just found the tones of these sequins really coordinated well with the tones of the gold and the orange and yellow from the Distress inks here. And just using my multi-matte medium adhesive for those. And that's it. That's today's card creation. I hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see your comments and visit again. Thanks for coming. Bye.